It's really, really great to have all of you here. Our first trade show in 2 years. It took a little extra time to plan this one. So we're really thrilled to have everybody here. Our member companies, 140 member companies, the 50 sponsoring companies here at the event, and every single one of you who chose to join us. That's the only reason we're here, so thank you so much. We have a great slate of educational sessions set up over the next 2 days. 9 sessions overall, 5 today, 4 tomorrow, so keep on joining us. We're kicking it off with a great group here, and I've got to also say thank you to our educational sponsor, Mojo, and they've got a brief message to share with you.
Before the session begins, I'd just like to say that Mojo is a very proud sponsor of the education series. We hope you go to every session, ask lots of questions, and learn new things. Enjoy your day. We'll see you soon.
So thanks to Greg and his crew for the sponsorship and for helping us bring you these great sessions. Great trio here today. To kick things off, I'm going to throw it over to Larry Todd from LeadsRx to get things going. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Larry Todd, VP of Sales for LeadsRx. Pleasure to be with you today. This is my first live event in a couple of years, so it's fantastic to be here with all of you. Hope you all had a fun time last night. At the performance-driven marketing event, it seems appropriate to discuss customer journey analytics and attribution, which focuses around the conversion event, the desired outcome that you're hoping to get from your various layered marketing approaches. We're going to discuss today with AJ Brown, CEO of LeadsRx, and Martha Dubicki, VP of Client Services of Rakuten Advertising, about multi-touch attribution and journey analytics. Martha, can you give us a brief overview of yourself and the role you play at Rakuten Advertising? And then, in addition, I'd like to ask a quick question. Can you share with us, just as a little bit of an icebreaker, the first concert you ever attended, and also what was the last concert you attended?
Sure. So I don't forget the question, I'll start with the icebreaker. First concert, I was very young. My parents dropped me off at Fiona Apple in Peoria, Illinois. It was amazing. Last concert just happened a few months ago. I was lucky enough to go to an outdoor venue and saw Black Crowes for the second time. And it was, again, amazing. So at Rakuten Advertising, I've actually been with the company for 13 years. Prior to that, I came from the client side, working at Klipsch Audio Technologies, and also a startup company that led me into Rakuten. So at the startup, we worked closely with then Linkshare. So I got to know everything there was about affiliate, landed at Linkshare back in the day as an affiliate AM, and then 7 years ago, I built out our multi-channel solutions for our advertisers that want to work with us across not just affiliate, but paid search, paid social, and programmatic display. So it's been a wild ride. I actually never thought I would be with one company for so long, but Rakuten keeps it very interesting, and also the growth opportunity has been amazing, and the interaction with clients keeps me very motivated. We are very client-centric in everything that we do. My direct manager also has vast experience on the client side, so he spent 7 years at Macy's leading all of their digital strategy. But very happy to be here today, and thank you for attending the early morning session, everyone.
Fantastic. AJ, same with you. LeadsRx is known as an impartial multi-touch attribution vendor, but I know that you've been looking at some broader capabilities as well. Can you give us a quick rundown of the company, the role you play, and if you feel comfortable answering the concert question as well, feel free to. If not, that's okay too.
I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, much less my first concerts, but no, I'm more of a classical music guy, so I would have been Vivaldi and Beethoven probably somewhere along the way if I were to remember. So I've been with LeadsRx since the inception. We got started back in April of 2015, and the premise of the company was to help marketers, at that time myself, better understand if clicks on Google Ads was actually resulting in revenue. I was a chief marketing officer consulting for a variety of tech companies, and I'd go in these Monday morning meetings, and the same question would always come up from the CEO. How are the ads doing, AJ? And at best, I could say, well, we got another 100 clicks last week. Is that good? I really couldn't associate those clicks with the business outcome, with form completions and revenue. So with that frustration, LeadsRx was born. We started coding the product, started selling it then in 2016. First came out as a multi-touch attribution product. Later, we added customer journey analytics. Next, we're looking at some aggregated data analytics as well. And it's been a fun ride. We've partnered with Rakuten in the last 4 months or so, I guess. Mm-hmm. Is that right? starting to work with
little
some of their
longer.
clients. A little longer?
Yes.
What was the year process part of that? Thank you so much. That was fun. No, it was great. Yeah, a little longer time, and we're so happy to have the exposure to their clients, and frankly, we've learned a lot more. I've always believed in shipping what I call a 60% product and letting our customers help to define the rest of it, and Rakuten clearly has done that for us, so thanks for that.
Martha, you've worked with multi-touch attribution models for a while now. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned?
So I'll actually answer that two-part, because I read a lot about multi-touch attribution prior to getting my hands on it with my own clients. And I was skeptical about the number of touch points that you would read and say, like, does it really require that much in terms of a marketing effort to get that customer to convert? And then once I saw the data, yes, it does. It really does. It is something that is so important, and that you shouldn't be scared of that dangerous word of overlap. Ultimately, if I'm doubling down in paid search, do I need prospecting, for instance, in programmatic? And the answer is yes, you do. You can play around with different scenarios where you do remove certain campaigns and really pulse them up at certain times of the year. But I would say that having visibility into a multi-touch attribution model is extremely important, because you do understand that things that you might have in the past seen as essentially a fourth flavor. I did some work for McDonald's, so something that you only need in specific times of the year is something that should be evergreen. And once you do remove that, your AOV, your conversion rate, your new customer percentage all suffers. So I would say that it's completely normal to see many touch points averaging anywhere from 11 to 15 on what I see from my client portfolio to convert that customer, because that experience from awareness to conversion can be quite lengthy. And you really do need that retargeting. You really do need all hands on deck, ensuring that that customer not just sees you, but ultimately purchases the product or goes after and fills out a form, whatever their desired goal is. The other surprise too, I think that there are many advertisers that are nervous, especially when they're owning specific channels. And they're saying, if I look into an attribution model, will that devalue the in-channel results that I have been putting forth to my leadership? And will I get my budget reduced? And what we found is largely no. You might have some shifting of budget, but it validates all channels and the interplay that you're seeing. So it isn't a situation of, oh my goodness, like display prospecting isn't working for me at all. That's it. We're killing that strategy and focusing only on non-brand paid search, for example. It really does give you that extra layer of visibility, transparency to fight the good fight for how you need all of these things running to have a successful business.
Perfect. We're happy that Rakuten's embraced that transparency and impartiality in leveraging attribution. AJ, same with you, same question. What surprises have you learned in your experience working with customer journey analytics and MTA?
Along the same lines as Martha pointed out, the layered marketing approach is so critical to getting overall success, especially in times of pandemics and economic downturns, even economic upturns. I think the more channels that we can be seen in, the better to some extent. There are some bad performing ones, and we can find those too through attribution and customer journey analytics. But this layered effect of marketing programs one on the other really does pay off. And as Martha mentioned, turning programs on and off, if you can do that in quiescent environments, is one way to kind of test that. A lot of attribution models can show you also some really cool insights about the impact of a particular channel on a program. I think one of the surprises I found when I looked at customer journey maps is, we track every step that an anonymous person takes before conversion. And while the marketers often think that they can prescribe a path for a consumer, they're going to find me on an influencer network, they're going to do an organic search at some point, maybe they're going to download some content, eventually they'll click on a paid ad and they'll convert. It doesn't happen that way. It just never does. So as much as you'd like to prescribe the strategy for communications, and while I do that myself and I appreciate it, the reality is you have to look at what consumers are actually doing to convert. And that's not just the B2C marketplace, but B2B as well. So when I look at customer journey paths, I'll use B2C as an example. Let's say they find you on a paid Google ad. That consumer will click on that ad 5, 6, 7 times to come back to the site. Not within seconds of each other, but within days and minutes and so on. It seems to be that once a consumer finds a method for getting to your site and they like your product, that they're going to keep using that same channel more and more. So then they convert, and guess what they do next? They click on the same Google ads to come back and check on order status. So now they're increasing their cost of acquisition after they've been acquired. And those are simple insights to see in systems like this. And sometimes it just means audience controls aren't set up properly in Google, or you're not doing retargeting in the way that may be most cost effective. But knowing how consumer behavior really is and how they cross over from devices and how they use social networks and so on is really interesting. My other quick surprise was so many advertisers, especially D2C advertisers, will put a lot of money into Facebook advertising. And I'm not here to say anything bad about Facebook. I guess they can hear me today, so I gotta be careful. Yesterday I could have said this. The reality is when we look at the comparison of Facebook to Google, pretty much, well, every case that I've seen, so I can't say it's across our customer base, we have about 700 clients. So I've looked at many. It's always the case that Google, people that find you through Google, either organically or through a paid search click, ultimately spend more money with your company. They make bigger initial purchases and they tend to come back. The social referrals, whether they're ad clicks or organic referrals from Facebook in particular, did they just spend less money? And again, I don't know the consumer behavior for that. That might be a project that a company like Rakuten would take on for a client. I think you need a focus group and some other advanced studies to really understand that. But it's just interesting that, you know, while we think that Facebook is, our friends are telling us about products and services and it's a great channel, and we double down our expense on that channel because of that, the reality is your cost per conversion or your value per conversion, revenue per conversion seems to be higher on Google.
Fantastic. Thank you. Martha, the real purpose of every analytics package is to allow you to make business decisions that are going to benefit the company, right? Can you give us an example or two of changes that you've made to strategies based on the insights you've received?
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is the best part of the job, is getting your hands on the data and then understanding what does this mean and putting forth tests to ensure that you're spending your budget as efficiently as possible and hitting those client goals. Whether they be ROAS, whether they be traffic, there's many that we're tasked with. So a ROAS goal and a new customer acquisition goal was something that a client brought to our attention relatively recently. And ultimately, our paid search and affiliate teams worked very closely together to analyze down to the campaign strategy. What percentage of new customers and then that cost per new customer each strategy was bringing in. So via affiliate, we partnered with 2 publishers to lead what we call trademark plus relationships. So they're allowed to bid on the brand plus a coupon term, for instance. And then we also designed a specific strategy for paid search using the same terms. So we went out there with our branded paid search, bid on the same terms that our publisher partners were bidding on, and then looked at that analysis and cost per new customer based on how much we were paying the publisher, based on how much it was costing us to pay Google directly for those clicks. And we found that the publishers were much more efficient at bringing in that new customer at a lower cost. So with that data, we made the decision to partner with a 3rd publisher to also do the same thing. And for this specific advertiser, it was very important because they had many wholesale partners that were trying to do their own bidding. So we wanted to take up that inventory in Google. So we did that and then reallocated the budget to more non-brand, upper funnel, and shopping campaigns. And it was a win-win for all. So I think that was a great example of how we used multi-touch attribution data to ensure that efficiency. And another example, I suppose, would just be along the lines of something that we always have running, that we're always looking at. We're always ensuring that any campaign that we have is bringing incremental value. So one way that we do this with LeadsRx is we've got a design where we can incorporate, a specific touch point or a specific grouping. So the grouping can be, let's use display prospecting, for example. So when you have display prospecting on, what does that do to the overall site in terms of average order value and conversion? And if we're seeing an incremental lift in both, that's a very positive thing that we communicate back to the client to enable us to push more dollars perhaps, really maximize those budgets. Or we might see like, okay, this is actually going down. Maybe we've hit our point of diminishing return. So we can trim back these dollars and then reallocate elsewhere. So that is something that's always on, always talked about with clients during weekly calls, and always reported back.
Fantastic. AJ, we've talked a lot about customer journey analytics. This may be a newer concept to some. Can you discuss the differences between customer journey analytics and MTA?
You bet. So multi-touch attribution is really all about connecting the dots between your ad programs and your business outcomes, whatever those outcomes are. In e-commerce, it's almost always the purchase of a product, consumer puts in credit card data, hits, ship it, and you're done. In the B2B world, it's often things like a form completion, asking for sales outreach, maybe somebody signing up to attend a webinar. It really varies company to company. But whatever those conversions are, that's what you want to measure. And then all the touch points that come before that could include an exposure to an ad that you saw, an impression, maybe a click on an ad, organic search, organic referrals, and referrals from third parties that are trusted sources of information. All of that comes together, and I like to think about it as a way to really assess how consumers are developing a relationship with your brand. Because if you think about it, when somebody types in business software for attribution, and LeadsRx might come up on the search results on page 25, if they click on that, sorry, that was a dig at my marketing team, which I didn't mean to do. If they click on that organic search result, then they're trusting that they're going to get information that they were in fact searching for, right? So there's an immediate trust factor. Same thing applies in the B2C world. If I'm looking for a new pair of trousers and I type that in, if I click on an ad for Macy's, that means I have some level of trust and faith that I'm going to see what I wanted to see. So it's all about trusted relationships, and I think that's really important to the MTA, the multi-touch attribution equation. What MTA is going to do is pull together all of those touch points across the consumer journey, no matter how long it takes. It might take 30 seconds if you're a heavy DR advertiser and you're just trying to drive immediate sales. If you've got a longer sales cycle, automotive, certain purchases for consumers, certainly B2B purchases, then you might need to monitor that journey for months, if not a couple of years. So MTA should pick up all those touch points across any channel. That can be a Google channel, it can be a display ad channel, organic channel, certainly could be podcasting, OTT, linear TV, broadcast radio, satellite radio. We have so many options to choose from. That's where the hard part comes in. How does a marketer really know, is TikTok worth my investment, right? It's a new channel maybe for them a year ago, they weren't sure about it. How do I do an A/B test to see if TikTok is worth my budget at all? So MTA is the tool to use for that. On the other hand, customer journey analytics is sort of part of a MTA, but also separate and unique. Customer journey analytics will help me understand what the common paths to purchase are. Which marketing programs pair up well? Is it organic search and Facebook advertising? Maybe it's radio and TV. Maybe it's something else. What are the combinations that really make a difference for my client base? And likewise, what are the powerful touch points that don't need any help, that seem to work on their own? Certainly in a heavy referral business, direct visits is probably all you're going to see. Somebody heard about your company, they go to your website directly through the URL, and that's all they care about. But that path to purchase is what we're going to optimize. We want that to be shorter, so we get analytics around how long it is. As Martha mentioned, she was first surprised by the number of touch points in conversion paths. They can be in the teens in many cases. And so customer journey analytics will give you that metric, and then you can make some optimizations and see if you improve it, shorten that path, shorten it even further, optimize it to get as low cost and as quick as you can for that consumer. And then you're also going to get those metrics by channel. Is Google, or people that initially find you, say, through Google, are those people converting faster overall or slower? What's my best source for my direct response advertising? Is it TV or is it radio? And customer journey analytics will show all that to you.
Perfect. Visibility into how customers build relationships with your brand, I like that a lot, and how different marketing programs work well in silo and which ones work well in concert. Fantastic. Martha, you mentioned incrementality a little bit ago. I think that's another concept that often comes up when talking about MTA. Can you define this for the group here, please, and how you've leveraged attribution and analytics to help prove incrementality for your clients?
Yeah, incrementality. I feel like everyone's expecting a magic bullet and everyone's expecting a definition that is the same, but advertisers all have their different view of incrementality. I would say that tale as old as time is, what will happen, for instance, if I turn off my brand keyword search? Will customers just go direct? Will those customers be as valuable as they were when I had my branded terms front and center with a Google ad? So we've done this many times, and every single time that we study what happens if branded terms are turned off, does SEO, does direct pick up the slack? The answer is potentially via traffic, but not via conversion. And when we take a deeper dive to look at the value and the lifetime value in particular of those customers, there's no comparison. So MTA has been a very valuable solution and tool for us when we can defend the need for a branded search campaign to be fully funded. I will say, other ways to look at incremental investment and value of specific campaigns. We've seen a huge trend and uplift of advertisers getting more precise. So going after very specific audiences with very specific goals. And I'll say, working with LeadsRx, something I've not seen in any other attribution solution is the cohort abilities, which are very cool because you can really dive into specific things like, I want to look at customers with an average order value of this amount or over this amount. Or what did my geo-targeted campaign do to customers in California? There's all sorts of things, or with this specific audience. So that has helped us say that, we push this out. You mentioned TikTok. So I've been leaning into that quite a bit over the last year plus as our advertisers are going after Gen Z audiences, and Gen Alpha is coming. Everyone's talking about it. I still think of it as my 6-year-old who's dying to get a TikTok account. I'm telling her not yet. But these are things that are going to keep coming up. How do we target this type of audience with this type of affinity, and how do I really look at this and the influence it had? Was I seeing incremental results? Did I see a spike? And that's something that some platform like LeadsRx can answer.
Gen Alpha is scary. I don't know if I've been living under a rock, but that's literally the first time I've really heard
Well,
it.
we're at Z, so you got to go back to A.
Oh, yeah.
You said tale as old as time earlier, which I had to play the rest of the Beauty and the Beast song in my head, right as you said that too, with my 3-year-old daughter at home. Okay, incrementality, AJ, is that on your radar at LeadsRx, and is this something you support in your products today?
I'm just realizing how old I feel right now while you guys talk about all this. And by the way, there's this huge white light in the sky looking at us, and it's kind of scaring me because I've told myself not to walk into white lights right now, but as I age. Incrementality is something we do in the Rakuten flavor, and I say that because the definitions, as Martha said, are different. There's another form of incrementality that some brands, very large global brands, participate in and calculate. And it involves holdout group testing, focus groups, and quiescent periods of advertising. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts to get right. Often you have seasonality, which makes it even harder to do. It's not a task for the faint-hearted or for people that don't have a data scientist team, or frankly, the need for the output. I hate to say it that way. It sounds wonderful, but the reality is the type of attribution tools that have incrementality built in, as Martha was saying, is great. It's a wonderful start for 99% of you in this audience probably, and marketers at large. If you are one of these global brands that needs that other form of incrementality, then yeah, that's not something that we're focused on at LeadsRx for sure. But the analytic calculations that we can do within the products by subsetting out the data, isolating data behind the scenes, and running the numbers for you, yeah, that's something we're going to continue to focus on and look at different ways to kind of slice and dice that as time goes on.
Perfect. Another hot topic, and AJ, we'll stay with you on this one, is consumer privacy, probably maybe one of the hottest topics out there these days, as well as the deprecation of third-party cookies. What can you tell us about the future of attribution and journey analytics in light of these issues?
So, if you've all heard about cookie deprecation, it's an interesting phenomenon that's getting associated with so many bad practices of consumer privacy violations and such, and it is. There's also a lot of use cases for third-party cookies that have nothing to do with consumer privacy or the violation of it. But that being said, third-party cookies are these cookies that are placed and then used to track people across domains, typically. So if you visit site A and you visit site B and you visit site C, this third-party cookie can mirror that data together or unify it together and provide insights to advertiser A, advertiser B, advertiser C. They use it for retargeting ads, which consumers are simply freaked out about. Nobody likes them, they never have, they're always kind of scary. So for that reason, third-party cookies seem to be under the fire, if you will, under the gun to be gone. And Google and Apple and others have all announced the deprecation of third-party cookies. Google's delayed their decision for a couple of years, I think. For attribution vendors, I can't state this clearly enough. I don't think there's any attribution vendor, including LeadsRx, that has ever relied on third-party cookies as the only way to do what they do. We don't need it. I can turn them off on our product literally this after this meeting, and all of our customer data would be preserved. They get the same insights. You wouldn't see a blip on anything. They're just a backup. They're just another way to try to unify journeys in a resilient manner. So we're always looking for resiliency in computer technology, right? If a cookie gets deleted, what else can we use? If that gets modified and messed with, what do we use? So there's things that we use, such as fingerprinting and IP addresses, device information, browser data, app data, local storage is another technique, first-party cookies. There's all sorts of ways to make sure that the same consumer who's visiting your site on multiple occasions, we can glue all that together anonymously. And that's my other stress point. Most systems, here I can only speak for LeadsRx. LeadsRx, we only have always dealt in anonymous data and first-party data. So that means as the advertiser, if you're using our product, you can pass first-party data to us, but that's it. It's your data. It goes in your area. We build you an identity graph that's only used by your company. It's never touched by another company, and it's there. It's never violated. It's never shared cross-domain in any way, shape, or form. Now, we also offer first-party cookies as an alternative. First-party cookies take a little more time to set up. Your IT team typically has to get involved. That's actually a good thing. More and more, we're seeing marketing CMOs bring in the IT department when they buy software that does analytics. And that's because all analytics software, typically for the marketers, does use a technique called pixeling the website and tracking some of this information, IP addresses, for example. And so IT needs involvement in that to really adhere to corporate governance for consumer privacy and for GDPR and for CCPA and all the other, CPPA, whichever one it is. CCPA. But my point is, you guys in the audience, if you're not talking to your IT team as you set up marketing analytics system, now might be the time. There's a growing trend. We see it with our prospects all the time. If you talk to folks at Gartner Group who study this, they'll tell you it's been happening for several months. And that's a big change. So what we're doing for that is allowing you to set up your own data clean room. If you do want to have your data separate, segregated, put aside in your control 100%, then we can do that for you. And it's called, we just announced it today actually, it's called the LeadsRx Privacy Studio. It's a special implementation of our software. We are a SaaS solution, so typically everything goes in one database, all commingled, but now you can separate out your data and keep it separate. Rakuten, we do this for Rakuten as a matter of fact. And the value of that is then you control it. You can turn it off, turn off our access at any moment. You can back it up the way you want to back it up. You can prevent hacks the way you want to prevent hacks. You can encrypt it at rest. You can do anything you want to your own data because it is yours. We'll still have all the rigor of developing that identity graph for you, for doing cross-device identification and so on, and making sure customer journeys are preserved, but it's your data. And I think that's where we have to go. I think SaaS is somewhat broken, if I can say that. It's a wonderful system, and when Mark Benioff and Salesforce.com invented it 20 plus years ago, we all were excited about it because putting everything up in the cloud makes a lot of sense. But as consumer privacy demands increase, having everything in the cloud in one spot may not be the right answer, may not be the best answer for the consumer. So I think you need to start looking for systems that allow you to segregate the data so that you, again, can have control over it.
Yeah, one important thing to stress there is you have options. I think, marketers, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt about the effect of how all this is going to sort of play out. So very insightful. Martha, do you see a growing emphasis in consumer privacy from your clients?
We do, absolutely, and that's something that we've been focused on. My entire stint at Rakuten, it's been a high priority, and certainly in the last 5 years, as we go through different iterations and get different information, I think it was a welcome relief to see, Chrome get pushed back for a year plus. So we were excited about that, how that affects our advertisers. It gives us a little more time to prepare and get them up to speed. But we are very active in ensuring that we don't collect any personal identifiable information. So that has never been a concern. We don't have data leaks. We don't have any of this. Our customers are very comfortable working with us and ensuring that we have their best interests in heart and we're not violating any rules. So we are making sure, especially being a global company, that we are compliant across the globe, because of course these are, rules are different depending on where you are. And also just pushing our customers to adopt different forms. So working closely with Google, for instance, to ensure that enhanced conversions are turned on, that we do have those backups, and then really leaning into that first-party data, like you had mentioned.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think it speaks a lot to Rakuten for leveraging an impartial attribution solution. I know that there's some others in the space that have acquired offerings to provide reporting to their own clients. But I think that impartiality and independent attribution analysis is something that clients really value. And I think, Rakuten's bringing a very value-added service to clients as a result. Did you want to speak to the impartial, independent nature of the attribution you're bringing to
that's
clients?
extremely important to us, to essentially not grade our own homework, that we can rely on industry expertise with many different models. So we can show our data. That was a huge point as to why LeadsRx made a lot of sense for Rakuten, because we could, on the fly, change the model and look at things like closer touch versus weighted multi-touch versus, more of a first touch model when we're measuring our efforts, and come to our clients with the right kind of media mix based on what the data is telling us. So, great question, because certainly what I do in particular, clients are expecting me to have a full forecast across all of their digital solutions, all of their campaigns, and spend to spend, that's not going to change, but the results will. So I just can't aggregate in-channel data that could have, very inflated numbers tied to this. You'd mentioned Facebook, this is notorious. Did Facebook really drive that amount of value? And the answer is no. So, yes, they're valuable, but not to the tune that their attribution model will tell you.
Perfect.
If I can comment on that too, it's interesting how many clients come to us with that very problem as their first ask of an attribution vendor. They've been trying the Facebook conversion pixel, they've been trying the Google pixel, and there's overlap and double counting. Facebook, for some reason, seems to think that they get credit for everything, and they do. If you don't know this, there's some 22 conversion points that Facebook ads can get credit for, such as I stopped scrolling, right? And so Facebook says, if they stop scrolling, my ad's visible, that must be a conversion, I'm going to count that, right? Clearly, if you click on the ad, you view the video and so on, but there's a variety of things, 22 of them, I can't even name them all right now. And that's one thing, so when you log into Facebook, you'll see that. Then you can create your own custom conversions as well. Somebody bought my product, somebody filled out the shopping cart, or somebody filled out a form. And guess what? Facebook counts some of those too. So now there's double counting. Do you know which ones are double counted? Probably not. I only know because I looked at their API and I pulled some data. I'm a coder also. Pulled some data out and started thinking, well, wait a minute, this is the same conversion as that one. People are double counted. They don't even know, they have a clue. But that's how the system was set up. So it's not that it's a bad, it's a bad thing, it is, but the point is you need to look at this sort of impartially across these channels. The pixels are great to get started with, to see in a siloed fashion what's happening with those vendors, but you'll very quickly get frustrated with trying to arbitrate between the vendors and justify the outputs.
Talk about justifying the outputs. AJ, one final question for you, and then we'll open it up.
Sure.
What are some of the most drastic changes that you've seen clients put into play, or have you been surprised at some of the inaction of clients, when they see the results?
It's so hard, it depends on the size of the company, but often if the system says, you really ought to reduce your spend in Facebook and put more money towards Google, sometimes it's really hard for people to do that. This is not the case at Rakuten, but you've got siloed organizations where you might have a VP of social ad buying or a VP of television buying. And these people don't really want their budgets to go down. It's on their resume, right? So you take budget away from them and put it someplace else. It's a tough decision for some people to make, and we've seen that quite a bit. The common thing we hear back is, well, I'm not really sure I want to take action on the output of the system. And if you really dig down, you'll find out it's just really sort of a maturity question about, can we do that? The other thing is you've got smaller businesses, business owners who just love doing their own TV commercials and instead of hiring talent. And they're just absolutely convinced that their spot reading is much better on radio or TV. And yet, when you look at an attribution report and you can decide if creative A or B or C is doing better or what, you'll see some different results. And it's really hard for them to understand that. Even harder if you say, by the way, we don't recommend you go on TV right now. We recommend you go off for 2 months to filter it out, feather your advertisements kind of thing. And they don't want to hear that either. So there's a lot of resistance still to implementing what systems tell you. It's for that reason that you probably saw, if you haven't seen our elevator, elevator number 3 on the far right, our concept here is that people plus data is what's better. It's not data by itself. It still takes human involvement to decide what action to take. You have to be willing to take that action. You have to understand it. And sometimes you have to really add your business expertise. So for example, our system might well tell you, hey, double down on Facebook. We want you to put 3 times the budget on Facebook because it's doing so bloody well. But you may be saturated or fatigued. Social channels get fatigued very quickly. You don't want to triple your budget. The systems don't know that. Computers can't really discern that natively. And same thing, we recommend you double down your ad spend on radio. Well, there's only so much inventory on radio, only so many commercials an hour that you can ever buy. Podcasting, same thing, right? There's 3 commercials per podcast, that's it. So that human involvement still has to be there. And that's the reason, I think, if you were to go to LinkedIn and search on the word attribution, you'll see thousands of people that have now added it to their job description, to their job titles. You'll see tons of groups that are defined for attribution and journey analytics. It's the thing. It's a skill set that marketers are adding to their list of expertise, and I think will carry forward. And to be honest, I've been in the software industry for a number of years. I've never seen analytics take off like this. I've been involved in data analytics almost the entire time, almost 40 years. And the reality is whenever budgets get cut, analytics were the first thing to go. We had a world pandemic, and we lost maybe 2 customers in that process, and we had about half a dozen call us and ask if we could drop their prices temporarily. They couldn't get rid of the software. And we did, but the point is, they still needed it. They didn't get rid of it. Even Rakuten had been using attribution for 5 years prior?
7 years.
7 years prior to coming to LeadsRx. They had a chance to say, well, we're done. We've used it all, we want to use it. But they didn't. And the same customers that had been using it are now using it again, just a different platform. So that's just a really interesting data point, I think, that marketers need to understand. Trust the system, but don't take yourself out of the loop. I'm not sure I answered your question, but that's what I'm saying.
You did.
I'll echo that on preconceived notions. Those are hard to change, and the digital landscape is changing so much. I mean, just going back to social one more time, and then I'll stop with social. But the rise of, what we have seen on TikTok, and then also Twitch, which, if you're not familiar, is like YouTube for gamers. And these things were non-existent, 18 months ago. So it's pretty incredible to see the shifts, but to also kind of witness the challenges working closely with clients. And typically, it isn't our main point of contact. Typically, we're lucky enough that our client organizations, our partner organizations are structured in a way where you don't have those fights. A VP sitting over just social versus paid search, for instance, and then someone else entirely over affiliate, and all fighting for the budget that they need. Typically there is a marketing manager or a marketing VP that sits across everything and is tasked with designing the best possible budget to hit their goals. So that's wonderful. But then they might have to roll into someone else that thinks a little archaically about channels and says, from my experience, which may have been a decade ago, this was the right way to do it. And that's just not true anymore. You have to be very nimble and to have your pulse on what's working and where your customer is.
Fantastic. Attribution and customer journey analytics allows you to get visibility into the entire customer journey, understand how individuals are building relationships with your brand. I think how frustrating it is for marketers to execute a fantastic layered marketing approach and then you leverage analytics that focus on last touch or maybe only a portion of the customer journey or reporting in silos, right? It doesn't fit quite well with the strategies that a lot are executing today. I think we're going to open for questions from the crowd, if anybody has any, for AJ and Martha. I can't see.
It's early. Come on.
People need their Bloody Marys after the
Probably.
party.
Oh, where's the Bloody Mary bar?
Nice. Is anybody doing attribution today in the audience as a marketing team? Raise your hand. Not many, not many. Awesome. You know, take a look at it. You might be frightened if you have read some of the third-party deprecation articles and bloggers that are out there. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to poke at them. They're just way overstated. Attribution's not dead because of the deprecation of third-party cookies. So take another look at it and see what you think about it. But it's also not as unaffordable as you might think it might once have been. So in the early days, it was quite out of reach, and only the largest companies could really afford attribution. We kind of sassified it all and brought down the price point, but there's other vendors too that you can get attribution from for a budget that's going to fit your marketing needs pretty well.
And we're going to be in room 222 on the other side of the elevator. Stop by and talk to AJ and myself, our team of sales folks here. Martha, hopefully you can hang out with us a little bit as well today, too.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.